Welcome to Parenting Great Kids podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Meg Meeker, and I'm really excited to introduce today's guest, Titania Jordan. Titania's the Chief Marketing Officer and Chief Parent Officer of Bark Technologies, an online safety company dedicated to protecting kids in our digital world. Titania's expertise has been featured in esteemed publications like the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, and Vogue. She's the author of the best-selling book, Parenting in a Tech World. She's appeared as an expert on national programs such as the Today Show, CBS This Morning, and Good Morning America. And Titania's passion for empowering parents led her to establish a huge Facebook community with over 300,000 members. And she gives support, advice, and the latest insights on raising great kids in a digital age. Titania, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
You know, what you do is so critical. And a lot of the parents that I interact with in my practice are scared of technology. They're scared of iPhones. They're scared of screens their kids are on. They're scared of Instagram. And I get it. And a lot of them turn to me and say, what can we do? What can we do? We feel that we're giving a little bomb in our kids' hands, and they go to school and they can see everything. So talk to us about Bark and how it started.
Sure. Great question. And, as we all know, parents are collectively feeling this fear. So one parent, a wonderful man by the name of Brian Basin, was actually working at Twitter almost 8 years ago. And he has two boys. And his oldest son became old enough to have a device that could connect to the internet. And when knowing what he knew about social media and tech and engineering and parenting, saw the existing landscape, he realized that there was no great solution for how to keep his son safer online and give him peace of mind. So he took a big risk. He left Twitter. He started Bark. That was July of 2015. And here we are. We are now helping to protect close to 6 million children across the nation.
That's incredible. And I love it how someone in the tech world, like Twitter, or Google or Facebook, gets what's really going on the inside. Because a lot of times parents will go, oh, it's just Instagram, it's just Twitter, it's just, Facebook. What's the big deal? But it is a big deal because they're not privy to what their kids see and what their kids experience. And it can be very, very dangerous. So how has technology transformed the landscape of parenting?
Wow. That's a great question that I don't get too often, but I love to answer it. I will start with the fact that if you have not heard of or seen the documentary Childhood 2.0, please watch it. Everybody go watch it. It's free. You can go to YouTube, search Childhood, 2, period, 0. And it is a very powerful documentary that showcases what it's like to be a kid today and how parenting has changed. That said, let me tell you more about it instead of just telling you to go watch a documentary. Back in the day, I know you're a mom. My parents, would have to worry about things like in real life stranger danger. Don't talk to strangers at parks and malls when you're trick-or-treating, etc. Let's worry about sunscreen. Let's worry about seatbelts. Actual in real life dangers. And when it comes to being influenced by information and media, our parents had a lot more control, right? It was just don't pay for cable television and don't have a television, right? They didn't have to worry about the internet. Now, our children have unprecedented access, and not just at, 6 a.m. and 6 p.m., at the typical news times. It's all the time. If they have access to a device that can connect to the internet, they can connect to the world can connect to them. And that's the entirety of human knowledge, good people, good content, bad content. And that alone has a lot of issues surrounding it. But then there's two more aspects that are problematic for parents. One is that parents have no idea what their children are encountering because it's not super obvious. It's buried deep in a digital signal. And two is the mental health impact and toll that is taking place just from an increase in a sedentary lifestyle and screen time, which is very addictive, and the comparison trap, where you're comparing your real life to other people's filtered lives, and you're basing your self-confidence and self-worth off of likes and followers and shares. So there's actually a lot more than that, but I'll stop there because it's a lot.
It is a lot. And I think one of the difficulties for parents is that most of them did not grow up with devices. Parents in their 30s and 40s didn't walk around with cell phones and iPhones and talking to people all the time. It kind of came with a little bit younger, maybe those in their young 30s and younger. And so I think they lack a real appreciation for the impact this has on the child mind. Parents, 40s and 50s, will look at something on Instagram or look at something and go, this is ridiculous. I can't believe it. But they filter it through an adult mind, which can rationalize certain things. And it can look at something and go, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. But a child can't, an adolescent can't. And a lot of the visuals or the auditory effects that a child takes in can actually change brain development. And so I think that it has a much bigger impact than parents think it does. So talk to us about how Bark utilizes AI. Does it utilize AI to identify digital dangers?
It does. And that harkens back to why Brian launched this specific software and app, 8 years ago. And because when he started to look at the landscape of how to keep his son safer online, really there were two options. One is manually pick up his son's device and look through everything, right? Yeah. Every text message, every direct message.
Which is almost impossible.
Exactly. Not conducive to a healthy relationship with your child, lots of friction, and just very time consuming, not possible. Or there was software out there that would scan for keywords, just kind of like scrape the data. But again, those were looking for very obvious things like drugs, sex. We know kids don't talk like that. In fact, kids don't even use words sometimes. They'll use emojis or memes.
Yes.
So we knew that we needed to utilize tech to help parents with tech. Enter artificial intelligence, machine learning algorithms, and Bark is using artificial intelligence to analyze not only the content of children's devices and accounts, but also the context, so that you will not get an alert when there's not a danger, but you will get an alert when our brilliant algorithms have determined that there is problematic content or problematic people that your children have encountered, and give you not only the problem, but best recommended next steps for, how to address. How do you talk to your child about this?
That's mind-boggling. To me, it's mind-boggling that a device or AI could go on and discern all that and do it very quickly, and then alert a parent. So Bark is an app, correct?
Yes.
And you put it on your phone and you put it on your child's phone?
Correct.
Okay. And so when something comes up on their phone, can you give us an example of how that would work?
Sure. So on my phone, and it doesn't matter if you have an iPhone or an Android, and it doesn't matter if your child has an iPhone or an Android, it all works. So on my iPhone, I have the Bark Parent app. And when I open the Bark Parent app, I go to my dashboard. I have one son, he's 14, and I can look between a variety of things, whether it's monitoring or his location or his screen time, or get insights. It's a very comprehensive dashboard of his online activity. And this is where I get alerts. You can see I have some alerts at the top that I need to look at and see, what's going on. Now, when I go into my alerts, I only look at the severe ones initially, because some of the other ones are just, he's 14. I have bigger fish to fry, right? When he was 9,
yeah.
When he was 9, I looked at everything, and I was like, we don't use those words online.
Yeah.
But anyway,
so,
but on his,
go ahead.
Yeah. And on his phone, Bark is a more behind the scenes thing that's acting as help to the parent app, to help with the location tracking, to help with the monitoring, whether it's text, email, social media. And I'll give you an example. I believe this is what you're asking for. So, Bark is monitoring my son's Instagram account, for example. And let's say somebody leaves a comment under his post saying, "You're such a loser. You should just go KYS." KYS stands for kill yourself. And unfortunately, children are cyberbullying in droves and tossing around phrases like that that are heartbreaking. So Bark would pick up on that, and Bark would send me an alert via text or email for potential cyberbullying. In some cases, it could be severe, depending on what the context. And then I would look and see, okay, this happened on Instagram. This is the comment that was left. And then it would give me tips for, okay, here's how to talk to your child about suicidal ideation and cyberbullying. And it's a lot.
So the child still gets the text, but you're alerted after the text has been, or the post has happened. Is there any time where Bark could prevent that nasty post from being posted, or is that a political issue? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, well, so a few things. One is Bark allows you to block or allow apps and websites.
Okay.
So if Instagram is not the best place for your child, and I have a strong argument for why it's not, just you don't allow the app at all. But if you do allow the app, you can set time limits with Bark. The next thing is that, in order to prevent this sort of thing from happening on a platform, that's the platform's job. So we as Bark can help you as a parent decide when to let your child use a platform, initially and over time. But as to being on a platform, whether it's Instagram or Pinterest or Discord or you name it, there's going to be bad and there's going to be good, but it's up to the platform to police that. Platforms need to do a better job of surfacing the tools to their users of how to report, how to block, and the platforms need to do a better job of removing those bad actors faster.
So, for instance, if you were alerted that your son was bullied, and let's say John Smith posted a really nasty post to him, KYS,
right?
Would you be able to go in and block John Smith from ever posting on your son's Instagram?
Not from Bark.
Okay.
But we would give you tips for how to do that. Here's where you go in the Instagram app to block.
Okay.
And actually, before you block, take a screenshot of it, because you will want that evidence if that continues and you need to escalate it to John's parents, the school, etc.
Okay. So once you realize there's some bad apples out there, you can get rid of them.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
I think that's critical, because I know that a lot of young girls, 13, 14, 15, and even a little older, are groomed on Instagram. These 50-year-old creepers come in and say, I'm 16 and my parents don't understand me either. And gee whiz, you're so beautiful. Do you want to have coffee? So if you were alerted, would you be alerted as a parent to that guy? I mean, do you have keywords or whatever where you can be alerted that this guy's preying on your daughter?
Oh, yes. We have escalated close to 2,000 predators to law enforcement. And that's just scratching the surface. We have alerts set up for predatory behavior, grooming, exploitation, sexual content. It is unfortunately on the rise and rampant. So yes, you would get an alert. letting you know what has happened and the steps to take, whether it's, reporting, blocking, the tip line to reach out to NCMEC, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, how to request certain pieces of media be removed from the internet if a child has unfortunately already sent them.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot.
Mm-hmm. So we're really talking about bark not just being a good thing to put on your kid's phone. This can save a kid's life. Because my concern, because I've seen this, I've been out a long time, I've seen girls stalked and their parents had no clue because they're the nice girls. But guess what? The nice girls can't say no. The real assertive girls will say, get out of here. I know you're faking me. But the nice girl goes, oh, I'm so sorry you're having a hard time. Sure, I'll have coffee with you. So this is really, really serious technology that really could save a child's life physically or at least emotionally. Now, I know that you work hard to sort of balance safety and parents knowing thing with a child's privacy. How do you do that?
And you have such good questions.
I'm a mom and a grandmother and a pediatrician. I've heard it all. So
qualified.
Yeah.
And it would not be conducive to a parent-child relationship if you were to go in their room and read their diary every day and then hold it up and point out the things that were problematic.
Mm-hmm.
We do not give parents full unfettered access to everything their child is doing.
Mm-hmm.
If it's benign, you're not going to get an alert. We are in the business of serving as a digital watchdog.
Mm.
If a stranger or potential stranger comes to the door of the house, your dog is going to go nuts.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if any sort of potential danger is happening on your child's digital devices and accounts, the Bark app is going to send an alert and let the parent take a look at the snippet of, hey, here's what's going on. You might want to dig deeper.
Mm-hmm.
It is a balance. And it's up to the parents to do their part to not overreact,
Mm-hmm.
to not freak out,
Mm-hmm.
to not be a helicopter parent, to give their children room to make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
But if you as a parent don't even have an idea
Mm-hmm.
that your child is struggling with suicidal ideation or being contacted by a predator, or perhaps even going down a rabbit hole of an eating disorder, thanks to TikTok's algorithms, then you can't be a good parent to them.
No. And I know that great parents, are always offended when I say this, but it's true. Most parents don't know what their kids are seeing and watching and hearing on the internet. And they always assume that because their kid is a good kid or a smart kid or a reasonable kid, that they can handle it. But what I try to tell parents is this stuff finds your kids. Pornography finds that 12-year-old boy. He doesn't have to go looking for it. And so the idea that Bark prevents creepy stuff from coming to your kid is critical because parents just don't believe that it really happens to kids. It happens to all the other kids. But their kid it's kind of like, when you have a 6-month-old, they're always smarter than everybody else's 6-year-olds. And, your 13-year-old can always handle social media better than your friend's 13-year-old, but it isn't true. So tell me what some parents have told you about Bark who have used it so far with your kids. Have you been able to get some feedback and testimonials from parents yet?
Every day.
Yeah.
And in fact, you were saying this is life-saving technology. Parents tell us that. I'm so thankful. Literally every single day we get messages from parents or Facebook comments on our page or Instagram comments just saying, thank you, Bark saved my child's life, or Bark saved my child's friend's life, or because of Bark, I now have better insight into what my child is dealing with and I'm better equipped to handle it. Bark has helped my relationship with my child. It's all about insight. As you know, as your children grow up, you, parent, no longer become the person they turn to. You're no longer the expert. In fact, you know nothing, right?
I thought I was through that phase. And then my daughters became parents. Guess what?
Oh,
I knew nothing again. I'm saying, do
right.
you know, I've written 7 books. Everybody listens to me, but you. And they say, but your mom. So anyway, it never leaves you. Parents never know nothing. So I didn't mean to interrupt. I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, oh, thank you, though, because that's, as parents, we all need to give ourselves some grace and understand that it is not easy. We could read every book out there and still not know what to do with our child because every child is different. And it's maddening, but it's also beautiful. It takes patience. You're not always going to get it right. But as long as you are dialed in, as long as you don't have your head in the sand, right? You realize it is your kid. It's every kid. Good kids make bad choices. Be there for them, be open with them, have those candid conversations. Make sure your kids know that you are a safe place, that you will not freak out, and you will help them navigate whatever comes their way. You'll be better set up, even if they don't think you know everything.
Right, exactly. Have you had any complaints from parents who'll say, but my kid won't let me put the Bark app on his phone? Now, I would say, look, I'm paying for the phone. The app goes on. But have you ever had complaints like that from parents who say their kids won't oblige?
Oh, absolutely. And it's slightly hilarious because speaking of how parenting has changed, parents today, and I'm guilty of this, I'm not preaching because I'm right there with you, are sometimes more worried about or concerned about being their child's friend or having their child like them than being the authoritative parent. And we are doing our children a disservice by having that mindset. It's a balance of power, and it's become incredibly imbalanced. Tech is a tool. You don't give your kid the keys to the car and let the kid tell you what they want to do with it. Same thing.
Particularly when they're 10.
Yeah, absolutely not. I pay for this thing. You wear a seatbelt in the car. You have Bark on your phone, is what it is.
And I think that a lot of the tension around phones and social media and so forth is the conflict. Parents don't want conflict with their kids. This is the reason they give me for why they gave their 9-year-old an iPhone. Well, if he doesn't have one, he's going to feel like an outcast in his class. Not really. But what the mother or the dad really doesn't want is to go head to head and battle with that kid. Because what they don't realize is once you go head to head and the battle's over, the battle's over. I had this with my son in video games when he was in high school. I said, none. You're not going to have them. You don't have an Xbox or whatever they were. He hooted and hollered and everything, went off to college. And he was so appalled to see how many of his peers were sitting in their rooms with their parents paying $35,000 a year in college tuition. They'd sit in their room all day and play video games. And so, kids don't know what's good for them long term. But I do really want to challenge parents here too, because this technology, the Bark apps, are so critically important to your kids' emotional and psychological and even physical health. It doesn't matter if your kids want an app or not. They don't get a phone unless the app's on it. That's what I would say.
100%.
Can kids delete the app?
In rare cases, it's not completely impossible, but we have built it so that if the child does figure out how to disconnect it, you will get an alert as the parent saying this has happened. And then you can have a conversation with them about choices.
It'll go from a bark to a roar. Now, you have integrated with school devices. Talk about that. And when did that start?
So, we launched July 2015, and in the early spring of 2018, there was the tragic school shooting in Parkland, Florida. And before that took place, we had rolled out a pilot test using our tech in a few different schools just to see how we could help schools like we were helping families. And our tech surfaced real dangers. Children writing suicide notes in Google Docs, you know, certain violent threats being made against school and school members. And because we had that experiment and because of what happened, we decided to let any school in the nation use our technology for free.
Wow.
So, and still have that offer. Any school in the United States can use Bark's tech for free. And it has really, really made an impact.
So when you say they can use it for free, they'll put it on the kid's phone, they'll put it on their laptop. How will a school use it? Because obviously they've got a whole lot of kids in their class.
Yes, they do. Yeah. So the majority of schools today are giving children tech, right?
Mm.
The schools have internet networks that children connect to, or they have Chromebooks or iPads or what have you. And so the Bark application will connect with the children's school-issued devices and accounts,
Okay.
not their phones. The phones are their personal property, and that's between the parent and the child to work with Bark on that. But
Okay.
whatever the school issues to the children to use for educational purposes, that's what's going to connect to Bark and make sure they're, you know, having safer internet searches and, you know, threats and dangers are escalated before they become tragedies.
So if somebody is sitting there in class and they have their laptop open and they pretend like they're typing and they're really looking at porn, will the teacher get a ding or what'll happen?
It could be the teacher. Every school sets up who gets alerts.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, their own granular level. It could be the counselor. It could be the principal. It depends. But yes, Bark will alert to pornographic content and then take action. But hopefully they have it set up so that Bark is blocking that content from even being accessed.
Yeah.
In the first place.
You know, I was going to say the technology, Bark has used technology to take an enormous leap in helping kids, you know, or parents help their kids with bad content and so forth. I think it's only going to get better. You know, I think that Bark is going to find other ways as they, you know, the years go by on how to actually prevent this from getting to kids, you know, without a lot of censorship, but age-appropriate things. I mean, I can really see this sort of exploding in different areas. And I think that it's an amazing opportunity or help for parents because parents, I would say, probably 3/4 of the parents of kids that I see here, the kids are over 10. This always comes up and they just don't know what to do and they're really afraid and they feel trapped. And so this is just really cool that it makes parents feel less trapped, that they can have some control without looking through all of their kids' texts and Instagram posts. No parent can do that. I mean, you just can't do that. So what's next? What is next for Bark? Do you have, well, are you allowed to say, or is there anything on the horizon that it's coming out with?
So we are always looking to add value to parents. So there's a few things we're hoping to launch in time for the 2023 holiday season. I can't speak to them yet, but think hardware, think wearables. But at the end of the day, there are just not enough parents that know that tech like Bark exists.
Yeah.
And in fact, there's not enough parents that even know about the built-in free parental controls that come with these devices, right?
Wow, yeah.
Apple has family sharing and screen time, and it's free, and parents aren't using it.
Yeah.
Google has Family Link. Parents aren't using it. It's free. Netflix has a pin that you can set so kids don't stumble across some of that stuff that's on there, right? So we have a long way to go.
And I would say any parent probably over 40 or 35 doesn't know these things. Again, it's not because they don't have the intelligence or they're not good parents. It's hard to keep up with. They didn't grow up with it and they just don't know. And so that's why I think it's really important that people like you get out there and sort of say, this is what we have. This is what we have. We only have a couple minutes left, Titania. So if to the mother who's out there, who's 37 years old and has 3 kids and she's a single mom and her kids have to have phones so that they can communicate with her dad or whatever. 3 tips that you could give her about how to keep her kids safe. What does she need to know and do?
Great question. Very powerful question. First and foremost, just know that it's not a matter of if, but when. Your children are going to encounter problematic content and people. So make sure they know you're a safe place, that they can talk to you about anything. You're not going to freak out, and you will navigate whatever it is together. So arm yourself and them with the knowledge to navigate the landscape and the responsibility that comes with a connected device.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing is to not let connected tech live in, bedrooms at night. Children have got to sleep. There's nothing good that happens online, after 10 p.m. So if your kids are going to be on devices or they need to have access to communicate when you're apart, totally understandable. But when they're home, when they are going to bed, devices in the kitchen charging, in your room charging,
Mm-hmm.
let them sleep. It has long-term ramifications for their health and wellness. And then finally, please use both the built-in parental controls that come with whatever tech your kids use, and look at Bark as that extra layer to alert you.
Mm-hmm.
Bark is your parenting ally because we can't do it alone. We cannot do it alone, and we need help.
Yeah. I love it. I also love that you said too, your tone has been work with your kids and tell your kids you're on their side. You're not punishing them. You're not
No.
saying, I don't trust you, therefore I put this app on here to spy. I'm here to help you, and we're on the same team. And even just the fact that you each have an app on your phones. I see this with diabetic kids. They work beautifully. If the child's sugar drops, mom gets a ding while she's at work and says, hey, you needed to eat something. So I think it's fabulous. Well, my guest has been Titania Jordan, and she has taught us so much about the internet and issues that our kids can come across. But not only the bad news, but the good news too. So I thank you so much for coming on, Titania.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me and all the families that you help.